Hey, everybody, welcome to our virtual Bible study. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's always encouraging that you tune in to watch the material that we publish that's published here on YouTube, if that's where you're seeing it, or on Facebook, or on Instagram, wherever you're viewing this at. Thank you so much. And when I often get the comment or a little thumbs up, or someone says, hey, just saw the show, that's very encouraging. We love to think we're making a difference. That's at North Hamilton. That's all we want to do is help people to the truth and help people in their lives with truth and make a difference in the lives of people with truth. So if you do that and you're encouraged by it and you view the program, I think it's awesome. I'm really excited every week to be with you like this. Now, if you're following our current series, like you're getting in on the series entitled Understanding God's World, God's Way, this is going to be lesson number 3, part 3 of our study, which means there's 2 other lessons. Right now, we're still in the introductory phase of our study. You've not missed a whole lot at this point. All we're doing is laying foundations at this point. Remember the first lesson, we introduced what we mean by a world view. And we said it's like a pair of glasses, right? You put on a pair of glasses, and let's say they have a green tint to them, the lens does. And you put them on, and you look at something, like you were to look at the wall behind me, and it's a white wall, or a linen colored, like a shade, and you look at it through green tinted glasses, it's going to have a green shade to it. You're filtering everything through that color. Well, your view of the world is that way. It's how you understand reality. It's your collection of convictions. It's shaped by a number of things. It should be shaped by the Bible. I'm going to talk more about that in just a second. It should be shaped by the Bible, but it could be shaped by your family, what their values are, by friends, what they believe, by culture, what culture believes, and all of a sudden you come up with a set of convictions, and now you're filtering everything through that. That's what we did in the first lesson. The second lesson, we introduced 3 such worldviews. We talked about the Bible worldview, that it's based on the teachings of the Bible. It's an exclusive worldview. God does not share his pulpit with other people, other things, other cultures, other ideas, other worldviews. It's exclusive. There's one way of understanding reality. There's one way of understanding justice and how it works. There's only one way of understanding philosophy and how philosophy works. There's only one way of understanding theology. There's only one way of understanding law. There's only one way of understanding sociology, right? It's God's way. And we introduced the Bible worldview last week. We also introduced, in the previous lesson, we also introduced the Islamic worldview. Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't a lot of Christians in the world. And I use that loosely. If you just take generically people who claim allegiance to Scripture or to the God of heaven, it's a lot of folks. But we're being outpaced in growth by the Muslim population. It's 26.3, I think, percent of the world population as it stands right now is converted to Islam. They're Muslims and growing fast. The United States, there are turning over some pretty high conversion rates in America, but I mean, like in places like Indonesia, like if you go to Indonesia, out of the however many 100 million people, like it's, whatever, 200 million people that live in Indonesia or whatever it may be, it's like 90-something% are Muslim. It's almost everybody is a Muslim in Indonesia. So, it's something to consider because Islam is a worldview. It's not just a religion where they go to a mosque and then they're done for the week and you really don't know a whole lot about them. Everything in life they do is affected by, impacted by their understanding of the Quran and Muhammad and what's taught in their documents and through their community. It is a world view where everything is filtered through Islam, including how they react in politics, including how they react in law, how they react to other people in the world. It's an important worldview to study. Then we talked about secular humanism. It is essentially the worship of self. Humanism is the belief, it's based a lot on evolution, where they say man is the highest point to which nature has evolved. We're just part of nature. We're nothing more than that. We are soulless. There's no outlook. It's sort of a bleak worldview, but it shapes everything they do because everything's individualistic. It's you are the highest source of authority for you. You get your direction and your morality from you. You do whatever you want to do that makes you happy, and I'll do whatever I want to do that makes me happy. That's basically what humanism is. Very much this idea that you are nothing more and of no more value than the trees or the whales or the seals or whatever. We're just all here. You see a lot of in the I don't want this to come across the wrong way. The environmentalists, right? There's a need to be a good steward of the environment. God placed us in charge and having dominion over the earth. We ought to take care of it. I'm all for that. We should do that. We should do things that are befitting of good stewardship of the earth. But I'm talking about the folks that, they want to save the whales, but not the babies in the womb, right? That's very largely based on humanism. Okay, so it's a huge worldview. It's a very dominant worldview in universities. They're all secular. They're very anti-religion, very anti-God. So it's important to study that. So we're going to do 3 more in this lesson. Now, real quick, if you're on YouTube, please give us a thumbs up. And then hit the subscribe button below the video. Would you do that for us? And then if you're on Facebook, would you on Facebook share the video on your timeline so that we have the chance of getting to as many people as possible? I've explained before, we're a public page on Facebook, so we don't send out and we don't accept private friend requests. That's not how ours works. You have to follow us as a public page, but you can't do it unless you know we're there. And sometimes you don't know we're there unless somebody that you know shares something from our page. So please share the video. Help us to go as public as possible so we can get this to as many people as possible and try to help the world with truth. Please help us to do that. Okay, now back to our idea. Our 3 remaining things tonight or today are, as we introduce them, Marxism. And maybe you're thinking, well, Marxism, why would we study that? It's gaining in popularity. So we're going to study Marxism. We're going to talk about New Age-ism, and we're going to talk about postmodernism. And those may seem a little bit more, maybe New Age-ism makes more sense to you because you know some folks that are kind of like that. But postmodernism, you're like, wow, that sounds pretty technical. We're just going to lightly introduce it. And then as we go through each individual area of study, like our first one is theology. When we get to theology and we talk about theology, what are we supposed to understand about God and how God relates to the world? The Bible has what it presents, and this is the truth, and there's no alternative. Everything else is a lie, according to 1 John 2:21. But secular humanists have an idea. Postmodernists have an idea. Islamists have an idea. New Agers have their own idea when it comes to God. That's why we want to do this, because we want to know how the world works in the ideas that people are presenting, how it really works, and then how people are saying it works when it doesn't really work that way. Okay, Marxism. When we say Marxism, we are primarily talking about the philosophy that stems from a guy whose name is Karl Marx. Karl Marx. Now, I know you could make a case that this was sort of the combined efforts of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. I get that. But mostly, it's the work of Karl Marx. So we're just going to pretty much be talking about Marx. If we ever make a passing reference to Engels, it'll just be that. It'll be a passing reference, but it won't be really anything more than that, because we're going to mostly deal with the philosophy of Karl Marx and how that translates into Marxism. Okay, he was born in the early 1800s, I think it was 1818. I think he was born, but it was the early 1800s. He grew up under the influence of his father, who was a extremely liberal thinker. Liberal morally, liberal politically, very liberal guy. And his father was also a deist. So a deist is a person who believes that God created the world, but that since the moment of creation, God has been hands-off, that there's no involvement of God in the world at all. So Marx really grew up almost as an atheist because his dad sort of disdained religion. His dad didn't do that. So those factors would eventually contribute to Marx's radical ideas that would become the structure or the foundation for socialism and communism. And trust me, when I say, I hope you stick around and you'll follow us, Marxism is socialism and communism. He was very influenced by very liberal thinkers like Immanuel Kant and Voltaire. Voltaire was a French infidel. He was very influenced by his ideas. And interestingly, when Marx was brought up, he was well educated. He was brought up in a very wealthy family. His dad had money. He moved to London about the time he was, I'd say, around 40 something, or 30-ish, 30 years old. And when he did, he just decided to live in poverty. He lived in poverty. He didn't try to do anything more than live in poverty. And he soured because of that. The poverty, along with the liberal ideas, his disdain for religion, eventually culminated into Marxism, the philosophy that is the philosophy of socialism and communism. Now, I understand people make an argument and they'll say, well, Marx was, he was very influenced by certain movements. Yeah, he was. They're irrelevant ultimately, at least in this class, in my class. They're irrelevant ultimately for our discussion. Although if you want to go back and read about the British political economy, or you want to read about French socialism or the German idealist philosophy, those things they were like right around that time, and they sort of provide some theoretical bases for the things that Marx would say. But in essence, Marxism is a system of thought that claims, and still claims today, that it's fighting for the little man. It's fighting for the working class. And we need to we need to self-emancipate the working class by destroying the owners, the businesses, the people with the money, because that's when the workers are really going to be free. That's when everybody's going to be equalized, and that will be freedom. It has been called revolutionary socialism. That's what Marxism is sometimes called. There have been some branches throughout the years. I mean, you read about Lenin or Mao. Leninism and Maoism were sort of branches of the Marxist ideas. They took his ideas and ran with them. But it's basically socialism and communism. There are a lot of people who are under the impression that Marxism died when the Berlin Wall came down in 1989. That is a lie. It is very much alive and well today. In fact, it is a very pervasive influence in college campuses today. One man said the Marxists and socialists who've been thoroughly refuted by historical events are now the tenured professors, the tenured establishment of the academic world. More Marxists could be found on the faculties of American colleges than in the entire communist bloc. The American Historical Association is run by Marxists, as is the Professional Literature Associations, whose field has been transformed into a kind of pseudo-sociology of race, gender, class oppression. And we're going to get into this. I don't want to give too much away now because it's easy for me to chase rabbits. I get excited talking about this. I think it's very important to understand how people are thinking. But when you get into these intersectionalities, these cross-sections about, this is the basis of political correctness. Marxism is essentially the foundation of political correctness in our society today. If we're hurting somebody who's an oppressed class, and they self-define themselves as oppressed, whether they are not, and then you start lumping things like transgenderism and homosexuality and stuff like that, this is Marxism. It's being taught in schools today. There are thousands and thousands of Marxist professors in American college campuses. It's been suggested that over 90% of many of the professors in certain facilities in the Midwest are all Marxist. It's a big deal. That's why we want to talk about it. The plan, of course, like all the other worldviews, is to destroy Christian culture. And they're going to do this by destroying the values in college campuses with kids, start them out young, thinking that Marxism is the way to go. So it destroys views of God, economics, sociology. It's an entire worldview changing worldview. That's what it's meant to be. A worldview destroying, worldview creating worldview is what it is. It destroys Christianity, the Bible worldview, and tries to convert people into Marxism. But it's all about political correctness. So here's why we're going to study Marxism as a part of our greater study, because it's very atheistic and it's very materialistic. We're going to study it for that. It is responsible single-handedly for the death of 110 plus million people in the 20th century alone. When you add Lenin and Mao and all the other communist dictators who advocated for the beliefs of Marx, Karl Marx. It is that. It is Christianity's most vocal detractor today, or at least one of them. It's one of our vocal critics today, our most vocal critics. And it is making inroads into Christianity because people in the Christian left have become, interestingly, Marxists of all things. So hold that on a shelf. Know that we're going to be talking about the philosophy of Karl Marx in this class. Now, let's talk about the postmodern worldview. Let's just introduce it so you know what I'm talking about. Postmodernism. You say, well, that would mean there was a modernism. There was a modernism, all right? If you go to modernism, people started questioning Roman Catholicism and basically started questioning every religion during the time they were coming out of the tyranny of Roman Catholicism. And then they wanted rational inquiry and empirical evidence and scientific discovery. And so you end up in this huge boom of scientific discovery and then this dependency on science where science was it, science became the God. There was a transition into what's now called postmodernism, and it's largely due to the influence of the writings of several people, but mostly Friedrich Nietzsche. If you hear the name Friedrich Nietzsche, or you're reading, you're in the coffee shop and you're reading a book and you look over and the guy next to you is reading Nietzsche and he talks about, how sophisticated he is to read Nietzsche, and Nietzsche is the best, and you should read Nietzsche, and Nietzsche's great. That's postmodernism. And I promise we're going to define all these areas in which postmodernists say this about theology, or this about economics, or this about law. But it has a lot to do with Friedrich Nietzsche, who is the guy who started this trend that God is dead. That's his. There's a lot involved in that, but essentially what he meant by God is dead is that we as a culture have gravitated beyond God. We don't need him anymore. You'll hear the term existentialism. Existentialism is part of postmodernism. The only thing I can know is that I'm here, but I don't know what reality is. Who knows whether this is just one big matrix or not? And this is all a dream. We're probably all living in a dream. This is all postmodernism. Nietzsche is the one who developed the idea of being non-theistic. Essentially, a postmodern thinker may believe in a deity, but it's not the God of heaven. It's probably themselves. There's sort of a mesh between that and humanism. Postmodernism denies objectivity. Postmoderns are the one who are most clamoring for the relativism of truth. The best verse in the Bible I know to describe postmodernism is Judges 21:25, when it says, "And in those days there was no king in Israel, and everyone did what was right in his own eyes." That's postmodernism. You just do whatever you want to do. It is an opposition to rationalism. It is a commitment to relativism where there's no objective truth. These are the people who deny objective truth. And one man described it this way, and I think it is the best description I've ever seen of this. Theologically, postmodernism, theologically, they're atheists. Philosophically, they're skeptics. Ethically, they're relativists. Biologically, they're evolutionists. Psychologically, they're soulists. They don't believe in the soul. They don't believe there's anything more than just you. Legally, they're pragmatists, and politically, they're leftists. And I thought that's such a great description of what postmodernism does as a worldview to people. We're going to study it because it's obvious that in our world there are a lot of people giving up on objective truth. A lot of that is due to the influence of postmodern writings and people who are postmodern thinkers. No, you can't tamper with truth without changing everything, especially your view of God and the scriptures. So it's important for us to discuss it. Morality is grounded in, rooted in objectivity. Christianity is all about that. So if you get away from objective truth, your morals are going to get messed up. And it does in postmodernism. Also, postmodernism is making serious inroads into colleges, academics, universities. Their most effective tool in colleges, and it's not just colleges, but it's early. They use this tool called deconstructionism. Language doesn't mean anything. These are the people assaulting our Constitution, saying language is always flowing. It doesn't mean that. So the language of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights today doesn't mean what you think it does, because we've deconstructed it and it means something different. That's postmodernism that's attacking that. It's the belief that words do not represent reality. Concepts are subject to various interpretations. There's no truth. There's no right or wrong. So that's the second tonight, or today, in this lesson. The third is what we're going to label this the New Age worldview. The New Age worldview. It's hard to get a definition for this because so many people within that are different in how they perceive and filter things through the worldview. It is, essentially, it's pantheism. It's the old pantheism that says everything is God, God is everything. So there is no God, we're all God. There is no, this Bible that I'm holding is God. And, this pen laying on my desk is God. And I'm part of it, and it's part of me, and we're all just God. We're all one with the universe. New Age people preach sort of a utopianism. The goal is just all to be in harmony. We're all going to be one. That's the goal, that we can all love each other and get along. And listen, unity is a wonderful thing. 1 Corinthians 1:10, I'm all for unity. Not the way they're doing it, though, but I believe in unity. It's called New Age-ism, or I call it that because I think that's the more practical understanding of it. It's how it comes out, this utopianism, this future paradise that we're going to live in. There was a group called the Fifth Dimension. They used to sing a song, and they talked about the dawning of the age of Aquarius. I mean, it's been around a long time. New Ageism, reading the stars, it's been around for a long time. This, in the Old Testament, they had occultists who did the same thing. But it's pantheism. It's the belief there that God is just the world, and the world is God, and we're a part of the world. We are God. We're just all one, so we can get along. That's the belief. And I get that there's different branches and there's different variances. They have variances within the branches, but they ultimately believe that God is impersonal. That's the problem with this worldview. There's no personal God. That God is the trees. God is the grass. That's what God is. God is nature. They believe that the world flows out of God. Everything to them is just a manifestation of God. The wind, the trees, the sun, the clothes you wear, us, the car you drive, this is all part of God. They believe, therefore, that God is the world. And they believe that miracles are impossible. They do not believe in the supernatural. Interestingly, they believe in the paranormal. It's the New Age folks that believe in the paranormal, but not miracles. They do not believe in the Bible. They discount the Bible. They believe that history is illusory, that it's just all a trick, or it's cyclical. So if you have met somebody that believes in reincarnation, that's New Ageism. So we're going to study this worldview as a part of our total study because it's a sizable worldview in the sense that it's very well advocated for in our culture. Lots and lots of folks believe in this worldview. It's estimated that there are, maybe upward of 1 million folks, close to 1 billion folks worldwide that have this idea of New Ageism. It's popular in some folks. Many people who are older, like the actress Shirley MacLaine, she was a big New Ager. Oprah is a big New Ager. Tina Turner was a big New Ager. Thinking of movies, I was a big fan of Star Wars. Star Wars is big on New Age because of the Force. May the Force be with you. But it's like this connection to the world, and the world gives you power. The Beatles, a lot of their songs were advocating for the New Age. When they got in their Hare Krishna mood, they would sing the song My Sweet Lord, and they would sing, Krishna, the Hindu god. So it's everywhere. It's all over. The transcendental meditation. I mean, you can go do yoga. Hopefully it's without all the yucky theological stuff that goes along with it in some places. You can just do yoga and stretch, which is good for your body. But in some places, they believe that you're transcending out of your body. You're becoming one with the world. It's in movies. It's everywhere. So it's all over the place. So what we want to do in this study is, in the next lesson, we're going to first be talking about theology. How are we supposed to understand God? How do we understand God from the scriptures? What's the Bible worldview? What's the foundation? But how do Islamists understand God? How does a secular humanist understand God? How does a New Ager understand God? How does a Marxist understand God? What about a postmodernist? And from laying these out, whether there's variance with the neighbor that you've got or not, in some way or another, we're going to describe every person that you know in the world through these worldviews and what we all should be, which is through the lens of Scripture. Okay, that's a lot, I know. I promise. Don't panic and don't get confused now. It's just an introduction. We're gonna slow down and talk about it all under each individual thing. It'll make more sense under each tenet that we talk about, theology being the first one of those. But I appreciate your attention. I hope you're excited about the study. I've had a lot of feedback about it. It's going to be a great study. It already is a great study. So please stay tuned. Let's understand God's world, God's way. And because of Him and who He is, I can say honestly, I love you, but God loves you even more than I do. And that's amazing that He does even more than I do. Thank you very much. Hey, I'll see you next time. Stay tuned. Go back and watch the other two videos. Watch this one. Watch the next one. Stay tuned. Give us a comment. Give us a thumbs up. Share. Subscribe. Do whatever you need to do to help us get this out. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. See you next time.